Safi and Marco dish out on the movies. And today we're going to do something a little different. At least it's a little different for me. Um, Marco's been doing it for quite a while now, and that's reviewing every Goosebumps book that ever was made, just about. And this will be a book review of the new and latest Slappy book that just came out a couple of days ago, which was actually the 30th anniversary of the Welcome to Dead House book, which I was shocked about because I remember that book and when it came out. It's just hard to believe that was 30 years ago. But anyway, Marco, what's the name of the book?
It's called Haunting with the Stars.
Haunting with the Stars. And when I saw that, I thought this was going to be, because it's like the show Dancing with the Stars, like a takeoff on it. I thought it was going to be, first of all, number one, I thought because it's a Slappy book, and there's been several, a dozen or 10 Slappy books that have been written, which is kind of amazing to me that he's that popular. Compared to all the interesting stories that came out years ago, like that they could have made more sequels, like they did with the Haunted Mask book, R.L. Stine. How he did the Haunted Mask too. Well, some of those others they could have done maybe more than one. I know they did the Monster Blood. That was one that they did several, but he did several. I keep saying they. I'm thinking about the TV shows. But anyway, I thought this was going to be a dance competition, and Slappy was going to be in it, and he would be a villain because that's what he is. And I was really shocked because he wasn't. He narrated it, kind of like Tales from the Crypt. He would go in every so often. He would talk about the story and what was happening and laugh about it and make jokes, and he introduced the story, and he was at the end, and so he was not even within the story. So that really shocked me. And I was wondering about all these other books that have come out, which I haven't read, the Slappy books, by the way, if it was the same with those too. So, go ahead, Marco. What did you think about this book? You've read so many of them, and so you are very more aware of the quality of this book and how it compares to the ones that were written years ago.
Well, it was just a horrible book. Nothing about it resembles anything Goosebumps related. I don't really even think it should be called a Goosebumps book. It's called Haunting with the Stars, but it should have been called the Haunting of the Washed Out Sellout, because this book is just so bad. It's a childish, goofy book that offers nothing scary whatsoever. I wouldn't even classify it as a horror book. I don't think it has any value to it in any way, shape, or form. There's no part of the story that's interesting or original. There's no good characters. There's no good plot anywhere. The whole book is just a giant waste of time. And Slappy, let's just call him Fruity Slappy, because the actor who they have playing Slappy is he sounds like the fruitiest guy in the room, if you know what I mean. And his Slappy is just so trash. He's just this flamboyant bargain bin crypt keeper, and all of his comments are just completely meaningless and don't offer any additional value to the book at all, except for the fact that they can say that, oh wow, this is a Slappyworld book, and there's really nothing of value that he adds to the book. In fact, all of his pages are a waste of time. You'd think that he's some sort of a really, oh, it's going to be so fun listening to the book in Slappy's perspective. And then it's like just like 3 times where he talks about what's going on in the whole book. And this book is overly long. It has all the same problems that the older Goosebumps have. The only difference is that this book is written for babies. In fact, I don't even think a baby would be entertained with this babyish shit. This book was so childish that I feel like, the older Goosebumps books, they were written for 8 to 10-year-olds and up, and these books are written for like 5-year-olds, and that's really disappointing because it could be a lot better. And the cover was good. I thought that the cover was fun, although it's sort of lazy bad art in comparison to the art from the old books. So everything about this book is just a gigantic waste of time.
Okay, well, I guess I had a little bit different opinion, but the thing is, I've read a couple way back when. That was Welcome to Dead House and The Haunted Mask, and I may have read The Return of the Haunted Mask, or whatever the second one was called. And I thought it was childish, but then they are for children, but I thought it really was super childish. And I guess the thing that bugged me was in the story, there's always kids. They're always like supposed to be 11, so, around thereabouts. And they're on a field trip, and 2 or 3 of them get left behind because supposedly there's an emergency with the class, and they had walked off to another room.
The book opens up with a bait and switch fake out story where they're saying, we're going to send you kids to deal with these aliens because aliens would never expect kids to come there. And then it turns out it's a story being written by the main character, one of the 3 disposable, generic, uninteresting, switchable characters. I mean, they're so interchangeable that I don't even know their names. One of them's Murphy.
I don't know what their names are.
Character more generic than Murphy's Pizza. Murphy, whatever the fuck.
And it's supposed to be 2 girls and a guy, and for the whole time, almost until the end of the book, I thought it was 2 boys and a girl.
I thought it was like just 3.
I was shocked.
3 its who just, what are they? They're not even human. They don't really seem like people at all. The characters in these books have gone from cardboard cutouts to cutouts of air with nothing in them at all.
Well, what irritated me was that they were supposedly the teacher left them behind and took whatever student was out because it was some kind of medical emergency, I guess, and they left them there. And that would never, ever, ever happen today. The school system would be sued. Right now there's other things where other people are getting in trouble, but the school itself would have gotten sued for allowing the teacher for leaving kids behind. And then the parents were like, they didn't even know that they were missing, I guess. And I don't know, just that all of that was so loose and odd, and it just would never happen, and it just was not good. I don't know.
And so back to what I was saying, because I got interrupted like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry.
In the opening, they had this bait and switch opening, so I can finally finish what the fuck I'm saying. They had this bait and switch opening, and it was very... Safi, shut up. They had this bait and switch opening where it sort of was reminiscent of Monster Blood, with the way that in those books you had these kids and they're just like dreaming the whole book, and they'll say like, "Oh, the monster blood's in the classroom, and the monster blood's killing all the kids and the teacher too." And it's like, "Oh no, that's probably not happening because nothing cool like that would ever happen in a Goosebumps book." And so then all of a sudden, it's revealed that's just a story that the main character is writing, and so obviously we know what's going to happen from there. It's just extremely predictable and generic. Where, oh, of course, the kid's going to actually go to another planet and it's going to be inspiration for their story. And of course, that's what happens. And then at the end of the book, you have this really trash part where they're on the school bus or something. They're talking with some other generic character, fill in the blank, cardboard cutout, paint by number character, and they're like, "Oh, have you figured out how you're gonna finish your story yet?" And the character's like, "Oh yeah, I figured it out. I know exactly how to finish my story." And it's like this is just so queer. It's so queer and dumb. And like this is the level that these Goosebumps books are at now. It's just a complete embarrassment. These stories are just totally not worth the time. Like this was I'm glad that we didn't get this book. It probably would have been too expensive anyway. But I'm glad we didn't get this book and we just listened to it on Hoopla. The rest of the book, the kids are left behind at this place. What do you call the astronomical system place? What do you call that? A conservatory?
Yeah.
They're left behind in a boring conservatory. And I gotta be honest, if I was a kid, I would have stopped reading this book like 5 pages in when they did that whole bait and switch. Of course, the bait and switch story wasn't good either. And that's the funny thing, is that I thought at the end it was going to be a double twist where it turned out that the rest of the story was just an expanded story. Like she or he, whatever the fuck character wrote it, the character went back and rewrote the story, and the whole story is the book. Because the whole story is at such a bad level that it's a story that you'd expect a child to write.
That would have been good.
You wouldn't expect an adult to write a story as bad as this. Uh, this book was terrible. Like it like even if you rank this book with all the original Goosebumps books, I think this book would have to be in the very last place.
Yeah.
So I'd give it an F minus. Safi, do you want to talk now?
Oh, I wouldn't have anything worthwhile to say. Except I would give it a very bad grade too. Because it just wouldn't happen. And as a parent of kids, and they're all grown up now, I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they would get left behind, and it seemed to be just okay. It's just fine and dandy, and it would not be okay and not be fine and dandy. And I don't know. A long time ago when he wrote these books, he had his son at home, and I think he was he was Marco's brother's age when he was writing the books. And he said that he would kind of run them by him, some of the storylines, and ask him what he thought about it. And since Marco's brother is 33, the kid who used to be at home is probably about the same age or older. And he doesn't have that feedback anymore of somebody that age. And I don't know if that has something to do with it or what, but he's like, he's gotten stuck into writing like like we are saying, for a younger audience, for younger than what was written originally.
Which is funny because the kids that read these babyish books, they like the older books better. They think all the older books are the best ones, and they're reading all the older books.
They are, and
So,
resellers are picking them up too.
so like, why has it been this decision where it's like, oh, now Goosebumps books have to be even more childish than they already were? Where they had these gay guys who wouldn't get in relationships with the female characters in the book, and they'd just be friends with them the whole book. I mean, it just gets to a point where you have to say enough is enough, and we're not going to make baby down books. Like, just who's this for? Is this like some sort of a book that like some conservative can say, oh yeah, I'll let my kid read this, and then the kid doesn't want to have anything to do with it? Like, that's what this book feels like.
I don't know, and it's just a shame. I don't know what the deal is, and it's too bad that we were talking about this before we started the review. Marco had about 20 ideas. I mean, just he brought out that one just a little while ago, that the character, this was actually the character in the book story, and that it would be like a twist, not R.L. Stein's story, but the person who said they're in the beginning said they were writing the story and they couldn't think of what to write and having trouble with the ideas, and that this would be that character's, this whole book would be that character's story. And that's a really good idea. I mean, it's really actually pretty simple. And not, he didn't even have to think very hard to come up with it at all. And he thought of several other ideas. I think R.L. Stein needs Marco to come help him write books to get feedback and write better books like he used to.
Well, I thought that it would have made a lot more sense if the whole story is childish and goofy. It's like a even less good Jimmy Neutron episode. Or no, you know what this is like? This is like a Planet Sheen episode. If you've ever seen that show, Planet Sheen, the Jimmy Neutron spinoff that only lasted one season, got canceled because it was so trash. I felt like in order to contrast with that goofiness, because a lot of the older books, they'd have like a moment of goofiness or two, like especially the Blob one, where at the end of the book it turns out a blob wrote the whole story and the blob is reading it to his blob friends.
Oh, really?
That was very goofy. And that's what this whole book is, but at least that was more clever and fun. So I felt like in order to contrast with the goofiness of this whole book, you could have had an ending where one of the friends, because they're so interchangeable, then why not just have one be the main character? The character who wrote the story, they sat down somewhere in the conservatory and they decided to finish their story because they were bored, and they spent so much time writing that they lost track of the group, and then the group left, and so then they're trapped in there and have to get out. And of course that still has Safi's issue, but the thing is that it would have been a good creepy type of story. I didn't even think they'd go to space. I thought that they'd be inside this conservatory. It would be like a Horrorland type of thing where you'd have all these simulations. They'd go to different planets that are fake. Maybe they'd have to do a flying thing where they think they're actually flying, but it's like a Clockwork Orange type of thing where it's like all being manipulated, or something. There's just so many possibilities, but he just picked the laziest one. which is, I mean, the story, it's just so bad it's not even worth talking about. But, like, the story, these kids are left behind. That's a problem number one. Like, especially if you watch that School of Rock movie and, you just think about how seriously these teachers would be in trouble if they did something like that.
Yeah.
They'd be fired. They'd be sued. They wouldn't have any money left.
Well, as a private school, they would have. They depend on people's private money, and if they lost the private money, they wouldn't be in existence.
So the kids are at the conservatory, and there's this guy, or I guess I can't even remember that character because he never appears at the end to explain his actions.
Well, he is a professor, a scientist,
He's a scientist.
and this was his experiment, and they were carrying out his experiment. And they had armed guards, and apparently they did all kinds of other research there. It was a research institution. Also, kids did field trips there, and they.
You think research, that would mean a lot of different things and creatures. It could be like an Area 51 type of story where they have all sorts of creepy X-Files type of things going on. But no, the story is the kids, they get taken by this Professor Wigglebottom or something, and he says, "Oh, you kids like space? Well, I'll make you guys a part of history books by going to an alien planet. Ooh, isn't that cool?" And then he forcefully puts the kids in these machines, and it turns them into particles and sends them to the planet like Mike TV and Willy Wonka, where he has to get chopped up by that candy bar machine to send the candy bars through the TV. And they're on this planet, and all the people there are two-headed people. They all have, of course, 4 legs that are like hooves, and it's just really boring where the kids are like invisible, and they try to blend in this cafeteria, and they eat some of the food there, and then they get taken by the main villain, I guess you could say. That's a villain. What's his name? He's like Horrible the Horrible or something.
I don't
like
know.
Horace the
It's like
Horrible.
Harry the Horrible.
Hor the Horrible.
He's supposed to be the leader of the planet.
Yeah, he's not.
Apparently.
He's not really a leader though, because he's trash. And he takes the kids, and I guess like he doesn't. I don't know. It's just really dumb. There's something about dancing, and then he takes them and puts them in a quote unquote goodbye machine, and he wants to kill them and make them turn into sand, Infinity War style, and then they get turned to sand, and the twist is they get sent right back to where they came from, in Earth. But the weird thing is that there's so many questions that come with that, because they say that the machine hardly works well anymore because there's so much sand in the machine, which implies there's been a lot of people who've gone through the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But where have all those other people gone to?
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing? Like, there are people who could start a war with their planet and stuff like that.
Well, also, this was an experiment, right?
Yeah.
So that means how many experiments were done before they got to this point in their experimentation.
Yeah.
Like Marco said. So that is something to think about too. And does that mean there was more missing children? Because apparently that's what they were doing. They wanted to send children because they wouldn't expect children to be visiting another planet. Wouldn't expect children to be visiting them.
No, that was the bait and switch.
Yeah.
That was the fake story. I can't even remember the professor's explanation, because we never even hear or see the professor again. And you'd think that, like, these kids would be upset. I mean, the professor put his hands on them and molested them. He physically assaulted them and put them in this machine against their will. And he sent them to another planet. And he says he's putting them in the history books. Well, how's that going to happen? Like, Chapter 7, Professor Wigglebottom forced 3 children to get into suits and go to another planet, and then somehow they're surviving on the other planet and there's no problems or realism at all, and then they just come back, and there wasn't really any point to the experiment at all, because we don't get any sort of conclusion of, like, what was that all for?
Well, the problem is that they were the kids were furious. They were happy, of course, to be back on Earth, but they were furious that this professor just decided to pick on them and experiment on them, and maybe they never would have made it back, and they felt lucky to be able to be back. And so when the professor said, "Well, did you go to another planet? What was it like? How was it?" And they denied even doing it. They said they were asleep and they had a nice sleep or something, and I don't know. But they would not admit to it. So he thinks his experiment is a failure. So so they leave. They go home.
Yeah, I just don't buy that at all.
So he doesn't even know. So that's part of the problem. We're not going to know anything more about the experiment and what he had wanted to accomplish and et cetera, anything about it, because they denied him the right to know that it even had succeeded. So
yeah, so there's no point to the book at all. What's the point?
I don't know.
This wrote a Goosebumps story, or someone went to space.
I hate criticizing R.L. Stein, but it's kind of...
Well, the story sucked.
I know, it's just disappointing.
It was garbage. I give it an F-. As I said, this is the worst Goosebumps book I've read. Well, it's worse than The Headless Ghost.
And he really has read all of them.
No, I haven't.
Well, you've read quite a few. How many have you read? Do you know?
I have 20 left of the original series, but then I have to read all the other series too.
Yeah.
I have to read Goosebumps 2000. I have to read all the other stuff too. So.
Well, I think he's read more than maybe a lot of people, and also it's just getting access to the books. That's going to be challenging, and
yeah, it might be too expensive to read some of them.
I don't know. They might all be on Hoopla.
No, they might all be on YouTube.
Or YouTube too.
Because that's where I listen to all my Goosebumps books.
That's where I'm the one that uses Hoopla, and you're the one who uses YouTube. Well, it's just nice that they were on YouTube anyway.
I mean, the older ones are so good that I listen to them on text-to-speech robot voices.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who wouldn't be able to listen to them.
It is hard to listen to them.
It's hard to listen to them. I slow it down to 0.75 speed, but it's actually, the books are so much better written that they're actually easy to listen to on that format.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about this book, Safi, that we haven't touched yet?
No, I don't think so. It was pretty...
trash.
It was just...
You were going to give the book an A.
I was going to, because of what it's written for.
Yeah, so what?
It's written for...
That's a shitty excuse for a bad book.
But... I guess another thing I was thinking of too, and this comes up really basically when the movies come out, was that you have a whole generation of kids. Now, Marco's like the second generation uh, who enjoyed these books as kids.
Yeah.
And that there was not, he did not kind of graduate and write. Now, you might say the Fear Street books would fit that. No, they don't. Those are for supposedly for high school kids, but I don't think high school kids were really reading those. Because once you read those Goosebumps books, you kind of moved on, and then Harry Potter came out. Everybody was reading Harry Potter books.
I kind of thought, I thought that Fear Street was a cool thing as a kid where, like, I thought, I could have sworn that, like, the whole series took place in one town. So it was like a cool thing where it was all the same universe. And so, like, they had, like, a map of the town. And but then I don't think that's what it is, though. I think it's completely different than that. And so I'm not even really interested, especially after those terrible lesbian propaganda movies that were made that ruined the series as well. I'm not really interested in reading Fear Street.
Well, just by evidence of this, personal evidence, my other son hardly bought any of them. We hardly bought any, and he didn't seem to care about Fear Street. And I'm just thinking, I think it's a shame that he didn't, or he isn't, because he could be doing it now, write a series of real horror books where they maybe were a little bit more, quote, R-rated, with, that older people would like.
Yeah, because
not little children.
That's the thing, is that all these kids grew up, and what Goosebumps do they have now?
Nothing.
They don't have anything. They have the show on Netflix, which is pretty good, and they have the old books, which they're still kiddish compared to what they could be, and so it feels like there's this gigantic audience of people that isn't being taken advantage of, because there's this stupid thing where it's like, it's only for kids, so that means we can't do anything that's for adults related to it, and it's stupid.
Well, think about this. Stephen King has been writing for decades, right? And he hasn't gone down and is writing for children, little children. He's still writing for adults.
Well, you just think about it, and it's like, if that was a Goosebumps book, none of that book would be the same as it was in the It book, and so there's really no excuse. I think that it's a terrible waste opportunity. Instead of making this stupid series called Slappyworld, where you have this fruity version of Slappy who can't even comment properly on the story, instead of doing that, you should do like a series called Goosebumps Graduated or something, like Goosebumps Next Level or something, and it would be like Goosebumps books for adults.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make everything for adults. Like that's the fun thing about the Goosebumps series, that is that all the stories are different and they all feel like they could be for different age levels. Like the Monster Blood series, I don't really think that series should have been always rated R type of thing. I think though if they did a sequel to it now, it should be like an adult thing where the two main characters are married and have children, because that's what should have happened in the books to begin with. So that's really what should be done.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, are we about done then? We gave our little grades.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, R.L. Stein. We like you, and we just want more from you of what you used to be and used to do.
You have these 30-year-old people on
Nothing.
Facebook. You have these 30-year-old people I'm not 30. You have these 30-year-old people posting pictures of getting Goosebumps, Haunting with the Stars in the mail, and acting like they're so excited to read it, and it's like, God, this is terrible. Like that these 30-year-olds are so excited unless they have children. Why are 30-year-old men and women genuinely excited and giddy about reading childish children's books? These are people who need adult stuff to read and watch. They don't need this childish crap. So.
So, okay, well, if we're finished, we like you to press the like button if you like this video. And if you would like to be one of our subscribers, because as you can tell, we do have a varied content, and it isn't just doing movies, but we do series, shows, and some book reviews, and all kinds of different things.
Yeah, next week, what will we be doing, Safi, on Wednesday?
God.
What will we be doing to celebrate 300 subscribers?
Marco wants to binge watch 12 hours of TV of Tom Cruise movies.
It's a Tom Cruise movie for each decade that he's alive, because he'll be 60. So it'd be 6 Tom Cruise movies of, and what happened was, I picked 6 random ones, which were, I didn't really like that list. Safi picked 6, which was an okay list. It was like Mission Impossible heavy. And then my list I picked, and my list won the random wheel spin. And I promise I didn't cheat, because I like to let the random things happen. I wouldn't want to manipulate that unless it was really bad. So, we're going to be doing that on Wednesday.
Ugh.
Safi?
Marco promised me that if I did that, he would go with me to the bins. Because I like to go to the bins. That's the Goodwill outlet where you can get all kinds of good stuff for practically nothing. It's weighed by the pound. And it's the last stop on the way to the landfill. And I have found so many good things, as well as other resellers around the country. And of course, all the prices by the pound vary by location and state. But anyway, he promised he would go with me, because he really does enjoy going too. And he has actually found me good clothing as well as some good books.
I enjoyed going for another reason that won't be talked about in this video.
Oh, I'm afraid. That's okay. But anyway, it's fun to do it. If you ever want to do something that's just totally different. Of course, it may not be something you like, but anyway. And people find Goosebumps books at the bins too, and been picking them up and collecting them and selling them, because they are selling now, but in lots, of course. So, anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.